Lieutenant Park Ji-ho walked into the briefing room with his shoulders straight and his hands behind his back. Admiral Yoon was waiting for him with a serious look on his face. The room smelled like coffee and metal, just like every other military briefing room Ji-ho had been in over the past 5 years. "Sit down, Lieutenant," Admiral Yoon said, pointing to the chair across from his desk. "I have a special job for you." Ji-ho sat down and waited. He had been in the Terran Coalition's Elite Protection Unit for 3 years now, and he knew when something big was coming. The Admiral only called people into his office personally when the mission was important or dangerous, usually both. "You're going to Nexus 7, the Admiral said, sliding a datapad across the desk. "It's a neutral space station where we're having peace talks with the Catherian Empire." Ji-ho picked up the datapad and started reading. The Catherians were one of the most advanced alien species in the galaxy. They looked like living crystals, with transparent skin that glowed different colors depending on their mood. They were incredibly smart and lived for hundreds of years. They also thought humans were basically smart animals who couldn't control their emotions. "Your job is to protect Princess Aravel during the negotiations," Admiral Yoon continued. "She's important to their royal family, and there are groups on both sides who don't want peace." "Understood, sir," Ji-ho said, though he was already wondering what it would be like to work with someone who probably thought he was an idiot. The trip to Nexus 7 took 2 days. Ji-ho spent most of the time reading about Catherian culture and trying to prepare himself. He learned that they made all their decisions based on logic and math. They didn't understand why humans got angry or sad or happy about things. To them, emotions were like a disease that made people do stupid things. When he arrived at the station, Ji-ho was amazed by how big it was. Nexus 7 was like a small city floating in space, with different sections for different alien species. The diplomatic area was in the center, with fancy rooms and beautiful decorations from dozens of different worlds. Princess Aravel was waiting for him in the main diplomatic suite. Ji-ho had seen pictures of Catherians before, but meeting one in person was different. She was tall and elegant, with skin that looked like purple crystal. Her eyes were the color of deep space, and when she looked at him, he felt like she was seeing right through him. "So you are my human protector," she said. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but there was definitely judgment in her tone. "I was told your species excels at violence. I prefer to think of it as keeping people safe, Your Highness," Ji-ho replied politely. She tilted her head, studying him like he was an interesting bug. "How curious. You didn't react with anger to my comment. Most humans would have." Over the next day, Princess Aravel asked him lots of questions. She wanted to know how humans made decisions without calculating all the possibilities first. She was confused about why people fell in love or got excited about art or music. To her, these things seemed like weaknesses that made humans unpredictable and dangerous. "Your species fascinates me," she admitted on their second day together. They were standing on a balcony overlooking the station's central garden, where plants from 50 different worlds grew together. "You make decisions based on feelings instead of facts. How do you survive?" Ji-ho was about to explain that emotions actually helped humans adapt and survive when the world exploded around them. The windows of the diplomatic suite shattered as 3 plasma bolts burned through the air. Ji-ho saw the muzzle flashes before. He saw the attackers. 3 figures in advanced stealth suits materialized out of thin air, their weapons already aimed at Princess Aravel. Time seemed to slow down. Ji-ho's 5 years of military training took over. He didn't think about the odds or calculate the best strategy. He just moved. He threw himself at Princess Aravel, knocking her behind a thick marble pillar just as another round of plasma bolts scorched the air where she had been standing. His sidearm was in his hands before he even realized he had drawn it. The first assassin was reloading. Ji-ho put 2 rounds center mass, and the figure dropped. The second assassin was moving to flank them. Ji-ho rolled sideways and came up firing, catching the attacker in the shoulder and spinning him around. The third assassin had found cover behind an overturned table. Ji-ho couldn't get a clean shot, but he noticed the room's smart lighting system was still active. He pulled out his communicator and quickly hacked into the system, making all the lights strobe in a random pattern. The assassin's stealth suit couldn't adapt to the chaotic light changes. For just a second, Jiho could see him clearly. That was all he needed. "Move!" Jiho shouted to Princess Aravel, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the emergency exit. They ran through maintenance corridors as alarms blared throughout the station. Princess Aravel's crystal skin was glowing bright purple, which Jiho had learned meant she was shocked or scared. "Impossible," she whispered, as they stopped to catch their breath in a service tunnel. "You reacted without calculating probabilities. You didn't analyze the tactical situation or consider the odds of success. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts," Jiho said, checking his weapon and listening for pursuit. "But that's illogical," she insisted. "How did you know the correct response?" Jiho looked at her glowing face in the dim tunnel light. For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't sound superior or judgmental. She sounded genuinely confused and maybe a little impressed. "I didn't know," he admitted. "I just knew I had to protect you. Everything else came naturally." Princess Aravel stared at him for a long moment. Her skin shifted from purple to a soft blue color that Jiho didn't recognize. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "there are things about your species that mine doesn't understand." The loud warning sirens echoed through the dark corridors as Jiho and Princess Aravel made their way deeper into the station's lower levels. The emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. Jiho could hear the princess breathing heavily behind him, and when he looked back he noticed her crystal skin wasn't glowing as brightly as before. "Are you okay?" he asked, stopping to let her rest against a maintenance panel. "I am experiencing what you would call fatigue," she said, her musical voice quieter than usual. "My people require less rest than humans, but we still have limits." Jiho nodded and checked his communicator. Still no signal. Whoever had attacked them had done more than just try to kill the princess. They had systematically shut down the station's main power systems, turning the upper levels into a death trap and forcing them down into this maze of service tunnels and maintenance shafts. "We need to find a way to restore power to the main sections," Princess Aravel said, closing her eyes and concentrating. Her people had incredible memories, and she was probably creating a perfect mental map of the station's layout. The logical approach would be to locate the primary power junction and restart the systems manually. Jiho felt a slight breeze on his face and turned toward it. The air was moving, which meant it was being circulated by working ventilation systems somewhere nearby. "Or we could follow the air current," he suggested, pointing in the direction the breeze was coming from. "Air flows toward operational sections of the station." Princess Aravel opened her eyes and looked at him like he had suggested they navigate by throwing dice. "That is completely unscientific. Air currents can be affected by dozens of variables: temperature differences, structural damage, secondary circulation systems. Following random air movement is not a reliable method of navigation." "Maybe not," Jiho said, "but it's what we've got right now." The princess's analytical mind clearly wanted to reject his suggestion. Her people had been making decisions based on careful calculations and logical analysis for thousands of years, but they were trapped in a dark maze with no communication, no maps and no way to contact help. Desperate circumstances sometimes required desperate measures. "Very well," she said finally. "I will trust your intuition." They walked through the maintenance tunnels for what felt like hours. Jiho kept one hand on the wall and paid attention to the air movement, while Princess Aravel stayed close behind him. The tunnels branched and split in all directions, and, without the air current to guide them, they would have been completely lost. "This is highly inefficient," the princess said after they had climbed down yet another ladder into a lower level. "We have no way to measure our progress or confirm we are moving in the correct direction." "Trust me," Jiho said, though he was starting to have doubts himself. The air current was getting stronger, but they had been walking for a long time without finding any signs of active systems. Finally, after climbing through 3 levels of maintenance shafts that barely fit their bodies, they emerged into a corridor that was actually lit. Not just emergency lighting, but real lights connected to a working power grid. Jiho could hear the hum of active machinery through the walls. "How did you know?" Princess Aravel asked. and for the first time since he'd met her, her voice carried genuine wonder instead of judgment. How did following air currents lead us to an operational section? Jiho smiled and sat down on a maintenance crate to rest. My grandfather was a miner back on Earth. He worked in deep tunnels for 40 years. He always said that underground places are alive, and if you know how to listen, they'll tell you their secrets. What do you mean? She asked, sitting down beside him. Air moves for reasons, Jiho explained. It gets sucked toward working ventilation systems. It flows away from blocked passages. It carries heat from active machinery and cold from empty spaces. My grandfather taught me to feel these things, to read a place's breathing patterns. Princess Aravel was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Your grandfather taught you to use intuitive pattern recognition instead of systematic analysis. He taught me to pay attention, Jiho corrected gently. They had only been resting for a few minutes when Jiho noticed a strange smell in the air. It was sharp and chemical, like burning plastic mixed with something metallic. We need to move, he said, standing up quickly. That's toxic gas. Sure enough, a thin green mist was starting to seep under a nearby door. Someone had found their location and was trying to flush them out with poison gas. The corridor they were in had no other exits except the maintenance shaft they had come from. The emergency supply lockers, Princess Aravel said, pointing to a panel on the wall. They contain oxygen masks and breathing apparatus. But the supply locker was on the other side of the door where the gas was coming from. The corridor was already starting to fill with the green mist, and Jiho's eyes were beginning to water. Stay here, he told the princess, pulling his shirt up over his nose and mouth. I'll get the supplies. That is illogical, she said, her skin flashing bright red with alarm. The gas concentration is increasing rapidly. You will be overcome before you can retrieve the equipment and return. Maybe, Jiho said, but you'll definitely die if we just sit here. He ran toward the supply locker, holding his breath and trying to ignore the burning sensation in his eyes and throat. The gas was thicker near the door, and by the time he reached the emergency panel, he was starting to feel dizzy. Princess Aravel watched from the other end of the corridor as Jiho forced open the supply locker and grabbed 2 oxygen masks and a portable air tank. He was moving slower now, stumbling as the toxic gas affected his nervous system. For the first time in her 300-year life, Princess Aravel felt something her people had no name for. It was a burning sensation in her chest, a desperate need for this human to survive. Her analytical mind told her his behavior was irrational self-destruction. He was risking certain death for uncertain gain, but as she watched him struggle back toward her, carrying the equipment that would save both their lives, she began to understand something important. What her people called weakness and illogical behavior, humans called something else entirely. They called it love. And maybe that wasn't a weakness at all. Maybe that was what made humans stronger than anyone expected. Jiho collapsed next to her, coughing and gasping, but he had the oxygen masks. As Princess Aravel helped him put on his breathing equipment, she realized that everything she had been taught about humans might be wrong. The oxygen masks had saved their lives, but now they faced a bigger problem. Through the station's security monitors, Jiho could see that what started as 3 assassins had grown into something much worse. Teams of killers were moving through every section of Nexus 7, and they weren't just human anymore. Look at this, Princess Aravel said, pointing to one of the screens. A group of Catherian soldiers in black armor was systematically searching the diplomatic quarters. Their crystal skin glowed dark red, which meant they were in full combat. Mode Jiho studied the patrol patterns on different monitors. The attackers knew exactly where to look and exactly where to avoid station security. They moved with the confidence of people who had inside information. This isn't random, Princess Aravel said, her analytical mind working through the data. Someone is feeding these killers our location. Someone wants the peace negotiations to fail completely. They had found a hidden observation deck in the station's maintenance section. It was meant for repair crews to monitor the outer hull, but it gave them access to the security camera network. Jiho watched as another team of mixed human and Catherian fighters moved through the lower levels, heading straight for where they had been 20 minutes earlier. Question is, Who benefits from war? Jiho said, checking his weapon. He only had half a clip left and they had no way to get more ammunition. Princess Aravel was quiet for a moment, her skin shifting through different colors as she thought. Finally, she looked up at him with sadness in her violet eyes. My people have a saying, she said. When you want to know who committed a crime, ask who gains the most from it. Jiho nodded. Same thing on Earth. Follow the money, or in this case, follow the power. They spent the next hour intercepting radio communications between the different attack teams. Most of the chatter was in code, but Princess Aravel could translate the Catherian military frequencies, and Jiho recognized some of the human tactical language. What they discovered made both of them feel sick. The attack wasn't just about killing Princess Aravel. It was about making it look like the humans had betrayed the peace talks. The plan was to eliminate the princess, frame her human protector for the murder, and give both species an excuse to go back to war. But who would coordinate something like this? Jiho asked. It would take someone with access to both militaries. Their answer came when they managed to decrypt a high-priority message being sent between the attack teams. The communication was signed with a royal seal that made Princess Aravel's skin turn completely white with shock. Prince Veltar, she whispered. My intended consort. Jiho had read about Prince Veltar in his briefing materials. He was a Catherian military leader who was supposed to marry Princess Aravel as part of a political alliance. He was known for his traditional beliefs and his opinion that other species were inferior to Catherians. He believes my interest in your species makes me unfit to rule, Princess Aravel explained, her crystalline features darkening with anger. He has been opposed to these peace talks from the beginning. He thinks contact with humans will make our people weak. So he's working with human military hardliners to start a war, Jiho said, piecing it together. Both sides get what they want. The human generals get their war, and Veltar gets to be the leader who saved the Catherian Empire from contamination. And I get to be the weak princess who was corrupted by human emotions and had to be eliminated for the good of the Empire. She added bitterly. They didn't have much time to process this betrayal. The security monitors showed another team getting closer to their location. Jiho and Princess Aravel grabbed their emergency supplies and headed deeper into the station's outer ring, where the artificial gravity was weaker and the corridors were narrower. They were moving through a section that connected the main station to the docking bays when the next attack came. This time, it wasn't assassins with small weapons. Someone had planted explosives in the structural supports. The blast hit without warning. The entire section of the station shook like it was being torn apart. Emergency lights flickered and died, and the artificial gravity failed completely. Jiho felt himself being thrown against the ceiling as debris filled the air around them. In the chaos, his only thought was protecting Princess Aravel. Without thinking about the consequences, he threw himself over her as chunks of metal and plastic rained down from the damaged ceiling. Something sharp hit his back and he felt warm blood spreading across his shirt. Another piece of debris caught his shoulder, sending waves of pain down his arm. Are you hurt? Princess Aravel asked when the shaking stopped. They were floating, in zero gravity now, surrounded by floating pieces of wreckage. I'll live, Jiho said. Though he could feel blood dripping from several wounds, his back felt like it was on fire, and his left shoulder wouldn't move properly. Princess Aravel's hands began to glow with soft, healing light as she touched his injuries. It was something Catherians could do for people they cared about, though. It required them to share their own life energy. Why do you keep doing this? She asked as her healing energy worked on his wounds. Why do you keep risking your life for me? According to my people's logic, your behavior is completely irrational. Jiho looked at her glowing face in the emergency lighting. Her crystal skin was beautiful, but more than that, her eyes showed a kindness and intelligence that had nothing to do with her species' cold logic. Maybe your people's logic is missing something, he said. What do you mean? Some things are worth protecting, even if it doesn't make sense on paper, Jiho explained. Some things are worth fighting for, even if the odds are bad. Princess Aravel was quiet as she continued healing his injuries. Her skin shifted through several colors and Jiho could tell she was thinking about something important. My people would say you are suffering from a mental illness, she said finally. This need to protect others at your own expense. We have a name for it. We call it the burning. What do you call it? Jiho asked. We don't have a word for it in our language, she admitted, but I think humans call it love. The diplomatic quarters looked peaceful and normal as Jiho and Princess Aravel made their way back to the main station levels. Delegates from dozens of species were walking through the corridors, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges like nothing had happened. The cleaning crews had already repaired most of the damage from the explosions, and fresh flowers decorated the reception areas. But Jiho knew it was all fake. The evidence they had gathered over the past 2 days proved that powerful people on both sides wanted these peace talks to fail. They had recordings of Prince Veltar coordinating with human military leaders, financial records showing payments to the assassin teams, and communication logs that revealed the entire conspiracy. We need to get this information to the council chambers, Princess Aravel said, clutching the datapad containing their evidence. Once the other delegates see what Veltar has done, they'll understand that the attacks weren't random. The problem was getting there alive. Jiho checked his weapon one more time. His shoulder still hurt from the debris that had hit him during the explosion, and he could feel the bandages Princess Aravel had made pulling at his back wounds. They had 1 clip of ammunition left and no backup. Your quarters are on the way to the council chambers, Jiho said, studying the station map. We could stop there first, maybe find some supplies or another communication device. Princess Aravel looked uncertain. Veltar might be waiting for us there. He knows all my usual routines. Then we'll have to be ready for him, Jiho replied. They moved carefully through the diplomatic section, staying in groups with other delegates when possible. Jiho noticed that several Catherian security guards were following them, but they kept their distance. Everything felt like a trap waiting to spring. When they reached Princess Aravel's quarters, the door was already open. Soft music was playing inside, and the lights were dimmed to create a romantic atmosphere. Prince Veltar was waiting for them in the main sitting room, his silver-white crystal skin glowing with cold authority. Beloved Aravel, he said, standing up with perfect royal posture. I've been searching everywhere for you. When I heard about the terrible attacks, I was so worried. His voice was smooth and concerned, like a caring fiancé who had been afraid for his bride's safety. But his eyes were calculating, and Jiho could see Catherian soldiers positioned around the room. I know what you've done, Veltar, Princess, Aravel said, stepping into the room with Jiho close behind her. Prince Veltar's expression didn't change, but his skin shifted to a deeper shade of silver. I don't know what you mean, my dear. I've been working day and night to ensure your safety. We have the communication records, she continued, holding up the datapad. We know you've been coordinating with human military extremists. We know you planned the assassination attempts. For a moment, Prince Veltar just stared at her. Then he began to laugh. The sound was like crystal wind chimes breaking, beautiful and terrible at the same time. This primitive has corrupted your mind completely, he said, gesturing toward Jiho, with disgust. But don't worry, beloved. His death will cure you of this illness. Catherian security forces stepped out from behind furniture and doorways. There were at least 8 of them, all armed with energy weapons and wearing full combat armor. Jiho realized they had walked straight into a trap. You see, my dear Aravel, Prince Veltar explained as his soldiers surrounded them. Everything has worked out perfectly. The human extremists have already been eliminated by my people. Now we'll execute this terrorist who kidnapped and brainwashed you. You'll be rescued by your loving fiancé, and the humans will be blamed for attacking their own diplomat. You're insane, Princess Aravel said, her skin flashing bright red with anger. I'm practical, Veltar corrected. War will purify both our species. The weak will be eliminated, and the strong will inherit the galaxy. Your fascination with human emotions has made you weak, but I can fix that. Jiho looked around the room, counting enemies and exits. 8 armed soldiers, 1 door, no cover except for some furniture. The odds were impossible, but he had been in impossible situations before. The humans will never believe you, Jiho said, trying to buy time. They know I would never hurt Princess Aravel. They'll believe what they're told, Veltar replied, especially when they see the evidence we've prepared. Video recordings of you threatening the princess, communications showing your connection to human extremist groups, physical evidence of your involvement in the attacks. All fake, Princess Aravel said. Of course, Veltar agreed. But very convincing. By tomorrow, both species will be convinced that peace is impossible. The war will resume. I'll be the hero who saved the Catherian Empire from contamination, and you'll learn to forget these ridiculous human emotions. But Prince Veltar had made one crucial mistake. He had spent so much time studying Catherian logic and human military tactics that he had forgotten about human unpredictability. While he was explaining his plan, Jiho had been looking at the room's safety systems. Every diplomatic suite on the station had advanced fire suppression equipment because of all the different species with different atmospheric needs. Without warning, Jiho slammed his fist against the emergency fire suppression control panel. Instantly, the room filled with thick white foam designed to smother any kind of fire. The foam was so dense that it was impossible to see more than a few inches in any direction. "Find them!" Prince Veltar shouted over the hissing sound of the suppression system. In the chaos, Jiho grabbed Princess Aravel's hand and pulled her toward where he remembered the door being. Energy blasts burned through the foam around them as the Catherian soldiers fired blindly. The princess was coughing from the chemical smell, but she stayed close to him. They were almost to the door when Jiho felt something slam into his chest, then his leg, then his shoulder again, right where the debris had hit him earlier. The energy blasts were finding their target even through the foam. "Jiho!" Princess Aravel screamed as he stumbled and fell. He could feel his strength leaving him as the energy weapon burn spread across his body. But he could also see the door just a few feet away. If Princess Aravel could get out, she could still reach the council chambers with the evidence. "Go," he whispered, pushing the datapad into her hands. "Get to the council. Show them the truth." "I won't leave you," she said, her crystal skin blazing with white light. "You have to," Jiho replied, feeling darkness creeping in around the edges of his vision. Some things are more important than one person, but Princess Aravel wasn't listening to logic anymore. As she knelt beside him in the foam-filled room, with energy blasts burning through the air around them, she finally understood what humans had been trying to tell her species for years. Love wasn't a weakness that made you vulnerable. Love was the strength that made impossible things possible. Princess Aravel knelt beside Jiho in the foam-filled room, watching his life slip away with each shallow breath. The energy blasts had burned deep into his chest and legs, and she could see his human body struggling to survive wounds that would have killed most people instantly. Around them, Prince Veltar's soldiers were still firing blindly through the suppression foam, but their shots were going wide now. The confusion had given them a few precious moments, but Jiho was dying, and Princess Aravel knew that all the evidence in the galaxy wouldn't matter if she lost the person who had taught her what it meant to truly live. "Stay with me," she whispered, her crystal skin blazing with desperate white light. Jiho's eyes were closing, but he managed to smile at her. "Get the evidence to the council," he said weakly. "Make sure they know the truth." "I don't care about the council," she replied, and as she said it, she realized it was completely true. For 300 years, she had made every decision based on what was logical, what was best for her people, what was politically smart. But now, faced with losing Jiho, none of that mattered. Her hands began to glow with a different kind of light, deeper and more intense than the healing energy she had used before. This was bioresonance technology, something the Catherian Medical Corps used only in the most desperate situations. It was also completely illegal to use on other species. The process would merge part of her life force directly with Jiho's failing body. It would keep him alive, but it would also contaminate her pure Catherian essence with human genetics. Under her people's laws, it was considered the worst kind of biological crime. She would be exiled forever, stripped of her royal status and branded as genetically impure. She didn't care. Princess Aravel placed her glowing hands on Jiho's chest and let her life energy flow into him. The sensation was like nothing she had ever experienced. She could feel his human heart beating against her palms, could sense his memories and emotions mixing with her own. His pain became her pain, but his strength became her strength too. The process took several minutes, and by the time it was finished, the suppression foam had cleared enough for Prince Veltar's soldiers to see them. But when they raised their weapons, they stopped in shock. Jiho was alive, though the scars across his body now glowed with the same soft crystal light as Princess Aravel's skin. More importantly, Princess Aravel herself had changed. Her previously pure crystal form now had streaks of human-like coloring, and her eyes held a warmth that no Cytherian had ever possessed. Impossible, Prince Veltar breathed, staring at them in horror. You've contaminated yourself with alien genetics. You're no longer Cytherian. No, Princess Aravel said, helping Jiho stand on shaking legs. I'm something new, something better. The datapad containing their evidence had survived the fight. Within hours, the information was in the hands of the Galactic Council, and Prince Veltar's conspiracy was exposed completely. The communication records, financial transactions, and video evidence left no doubt about what had really happened. Prince Veltar and his human co-conspirators were arrested. New negotiators arrived from both the Cytherian Empire and the Terran Coalition, and the peace accords were signed within a week. But everyone knew that the real breakthrough wasn't political. A Cytherian princess had chosen love over logic, and a human had inspired such devotion that she had broken her species' most sacred laws. The story spread across the galaxy faster than any official news report. In cantinas and spaceports, in diplomatic lounges and military barracks, people talked about the impossible love that had changed everything. Of course, there were consequences. The Cytherian royal family officially disowned Princess Aravel and stripped her of all titles and inheritance. The human military court-martialed Jiho for becoming romantically involved with his assignment. Both of them were exiled from their homeworlds and forbidden from returning. You're exiled, Princess Aravel told Jiho as they stood on the observation deck of their new home. It was a frontier station called Haven Point, located on the edge of explored space where no single government had complete control. So are you, Jiho replied, taking her crystalline hand in his scarred one. The bioresonance process had left permanent marks on both of them. His scars glowed with her crystal light, while her skin showed streaks of human warmth. Any regrets? She asked. Jiho looked out at the stars beyond the observation deck. They had been given permission to establish the first interspecies cultural center, a place where humans and Cytherians and dozens of other species could come to learn about each other. It would be hard work, and they would face opposition from extremists on all sides. None, he said honestly. Their first students arrived within a month, young humans who wanted to learn Cytherian science and philosophy, Cytherian scholars who were curious about human art and emotion. Even members of other species who had heard about the couple that had proven love could transcend biological differences. The cultural center grew quickly. What started as a small research station became a thriving community where the galaxy's different species could meet as equals. Princess Aravel taught courses on interspecies communication, while Jiho developed new security protocols for mixed species environments. But their real impact was simply existing. Every day, people saw them working together, laughing together, solving problems together. The glowing scars on Jiho's body and the human warmth in Princess Aravel's crystal skin were constant reminders that the boundaries between species weren't as solid as everyone had believed. Their children were born 2 years later. The first, true human Cytherian hybrids in galactic history. They had their mother's crystal skin and their father's human eyes. The medical experts said it should have been impossible, but then again, their entire relationship had been impossible from the beginning. The children grew up speaking both languages fluently, comfortable with both logical analysis and emotional intuition. They became natural ambassadors, helping other species understand that being different didn't mean being enemies. Years passed. The cultural center expanded into a small city. The peace accords held, and trade between human and Cytherian worlds flourished. Other species began establishing their own cultural exchange programs. And at the center of it all, Jiho and Princess Aravel continued to prove that love could overcome any obstacle. They had lost their original homes, but they had found something better. They had created a new kind of family, a new kind of community, a new kind of future. Standing on their observation deck, watching ships from dozens of worlds dock at their station, they knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes the most logical thing you can do is follow your heart, even when everyone tells you it's impossible. Especially when everyone tells you it's impossible.